All right, welcome to Art and Coffee. Today I'm going to be taking a look at this article titled Chief Justice John Roberts Stepped In to Prevent Firing of National Portrait Gallery Director. I've got some coffee, I'm a little sleep deprived, and I'm ready to go. All right, this particular article I think kind of lacks what's the word? They kind of spin things in their own way. Sometimes they can be in like very subtle forms, and other times it can be pretty direct. But I think just sort of going through this really short article and then taking a direct look at the president's tweet. It's not tweet. It's like it's a message from Truth Social, and then just quickly giving some context about the National Portrait Gallery, I think would be a good start. And then I have a ton of questions because there are some really big questions that come up with what's occurred over the last couple days. So here we go. More details have emerged surrounding the resignation of Kim Saget, the former director of the Smithsonian-run National Portrait Gallery in Washington, D.C., who left her post after Donald J. Trump said he fired her via social media. Many raised questions about whether Trump had the legal authority to make such a decision, and indeed, Saget, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, by the way, continued to report to work until she formally quit her post. You can't quit if you're fired, so I don't. That's very confusing to me. Um, and it now appears that one of the objectors to Trump's demands for Saget's firing was high ranking official Chief Justice John G. Roberts Jr., who is also the chancellor of the Smithsonian Institute. According to the New York Times report about Roberts' role in the Smithsonian, Roberts personally put a stop to internal suggestions among the board that the Institute follow Trump's orders. Carlos Jimenez, a Republican representative from Florida and a member of that board, reportedly demanded just that, to which Roberts responded, "We already have a motion on the floor." In the end, the Smithsonian's board ended up issuing a resolution that asserted that its board, and only its board, had the right to fire the director of one of its museums. Still, the resolution also promised that the Smithsonian would give directors reasonable time to make any needed changes to ensure unbiased content and to report back to the board on progress and any needed personnel changes based on success or lack thereof in making the needed changes. The resolution and the scrutiny over Saget's leadership followed pressure from Trump, who accused the Smithsonian of having, quote, come under the influence of a divisive, race-centered ideology, end quote, in an executive order earlier this year. In the post in which he claimed to fire Saget, Trump called her, quote, a highly partisan person and a strong supporter of DEI, end quote. Last week, Amy Sherald pulled the National Portrait Gallery's planned iteration of her mid-career survey, saying that she had been asked to remove from the exhibition a portrait of a trans woman posing as the Statue of Liberty. All right, so I also wanted to take a quick look at the actual message, and this is the message that our current president has put up, and it says, upon the request and recommendation of many people, I am hereby terminating the employment of Kim Saget as director of the National Portrait Gallery. She's a highly partisan person and a strong supporter of DEI, which is totally inappropriate for her position. Her replacement will be named shortly. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And then I also had a little bit of, I went to the National Portrait Gallery because I had some questions about, like, what is a portrait? Do you, like, if porn, you know, can there be, can there be a National Portrait Gallery that, you know, I guess curation is a form of editing regardless. It just depends on what kind of editing we're referring to. So yeah, I mean, it was just it was a big question that came up to me. It's like, what is a portrait, and what is um what is this place, and you know, what is, like, what is it all really about? So I just went to their about page. Of course, I explored other things as well, related to the National Portrait Gallery's website, but it's their mission statement is that the mission of the National Portrait Gallery is to tell the story of America by portraying the people who shape the nation's history, development, and culture. Which is super concise in terms of how it's communicating about what they, as a group or as a collective of people working together, are trying to do. Yeah, and I don't know. I don't really have a strong answer to any of this stuff. I have more questions than anything else. I think some of the questions that come up for me are, you know, what differentiates a privately owned institution from a public one? What about one that's national, in terms of its representation? You know, what sources of funding do institutions receive, and does that affect what decision making is able to be made or not? Who knows? When is censorship in public space considered socially appropriate or not? Is it based on, you know, the decision of people? I mean, there's plenty of things that should be considered for that, and I think conversations around censorship are quite important, because a lot of it has to do with you know, public sentiment about more, you know, social and moral frameworks that are currently present within a group of people, and also, you know, another thing that comes up for me is that there are plenty of things that are very, very, what's the word I want to use? There's a very large population of people who would oppose seeing certain things on a national level. So then my question becomes, you know, when we're talking about something like the National Portrait Gallery, are there some things that are just, you know, like, is there a is there a vote for what's curated? Like, you know, for something that's presentation of, you know, portraying this the story of America through its through the people who shape the nation's history, development, and culture. Like, who gets to choose that sort of stuff? And are they, are they the right person or people to do that? And when and how does that fluctuate over time? Yeah, and for censorship, when does it go too far? And is this an idea that fluctuates over time? You what is appropriate today may not have been appropriate 200 years ago, and vice versa. And the type of visual communication that was a part of, you know, people of a different time and place. The other thing that really gets me is just this, where it's like, what is an appropriate approach to firing someone, or letting somebody go from a job. Ultimately, this form of communication to me is so casual that I and public at the same time. I just don't. I don't. I don't think that this is appropriate. But at the same time, Kim Seo-jae wasn't fired. She chose to leave. So that's a little confusing to me in terms of the language that's being used, because even in this article here, it's like, no, she chose to leave. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's the other question that comes up for me. Is like, is this like, is this more of like a, I don't know, it's sort of like a credible threat, almost like it. At some workplaces, they'll announce that they're going to do layoffs, for example, and that kind of puts people on edge. The announcement of that, and gets them to start like looking for new work or something. Is this more of like an indication of a credible threat that then eventually leads to someone actively stepping down on their own, which is kind of what happened here, or is it the case of what is being discussed here, where the Smithsonian's board, um, you know, right here, it says it right here, issues a resolution that asserts that its board and only its board has the right to fire the director of one of its museums. But she left. She stepped down of her own accord. She kept working after reading this and then chose to step down on her own accord. So, you know, I don't know, maybe timelines, maybe there's additional communication that I'm personally not aware of, but it just seemed kind of interesting to me how this was all playing out. Do I have answers to anything? No. Gives me a lot to think about. Hopefully it gives other people some questions to think about as well. Am I taking a political position? No. Am I trying to say someone is right and someone is wrong? No. For me, it's more a thing of just sort of observing what's occurring and asking myself some questions, because I don't have the answers to everything, and I'm more open to asking questions than trying to answer them. All right, well, that's going to be it for Art and Coffee today. Until next time.